This data visualization is meant to be viewed in full screen, so just do it.
Hello, this is Felix, and I am going to present to you the data visualization that we have created for the Log 745 course at ETS. I did this with my colleague GFM, and he did tremendous work, so I thank him for that. So let's start. The year is 1955, and we can see here on this map there's a little bubble here. When I hover over it, I can see the location, Highland Park, which is probably not in Wyoming, but that is the data we have been given, so expect to see a lot of Wyoming tonight. Now, we can see from its color that it represents the rock and roll roots, market. And if I hit play, we can see new markets that emerge with new colors. And I can zoom around the map, scroll around in much the same way I would do it in Google Map. Now that I have zoomed in, the bubbles have remained in the same size, but I can make them a little bigger if I want to, or reduce them if I don't like the overlap. I can also uncheck them all and look only at the ones I want, comparing only a few markets, for example. Now let's hit stop, and let's go back to showing all the markets. I will now tell you about the different ways that the size of the markets for a specific region can be determined. So basically what we did is we looked at all the artists that we had. We took their birthplace basically, and this is what determines the locations. Now, to determine the size of those markets, we looked at the albums that were released for each years by the artist coming from those places. So the default size that we can see is the number of releases here. This is the most basic one. It is based on the number of albums released for that particular year. Now the number of chart makers here is the number of albums that are released that made it into a Billboard chart. So these are more popular albums, we could presume. Now the top Billboard position is not only the albums that were released in a particular year that made it into a Billboard chart, but this is weighted down by the position that they attained in the Billboard. For example, if they were at the top of a Billboard, they would weight more, obviously. Now, the releases weighted here is similar to the first one. It is the number of albums released for a certain year, but it is weighted by the tier that the artists come from. So popular artists were labeled as tier 1 in the dataset we had, and less popular artists were tier 2, and obscure artists were tier 3. So this shows us, gives us some insight into not only the number of releases but also the popularity of the artist involved in those releases. Now, it can be interesting to switch between those size selectors. For example, here in the year 1986, if I zoom in to this location where we see Cuba in Florida, we can see that the Havana location here released significantly less albums than the Miami location. However, if we switch the size selector and look at the number of chart makers, then we can see that the Havana albums released on that year were very popular, whereas the greater number of albums released in Miami did not make the billboards. So that can lead to interesting insights, and it would have been very interesting to have more data. We might be able to add more data in the future if we have it. This would allow us to look at other parts of the world, because right now it is very English focused. As we can see, we have only data for the US, the UK, and Australia mostly. and we have data until 2008 only, the year where all music ended. So there are also not every kind of markets here. Some music styles are not represented, so it would be very interesting to add new data. However, it's still pretty interesting and fun to play around with this thing. So I guess I'll leave you with this, and I'll go back to discovering everything about the music industry. Bye.